Accept the things you can't change, and change the things you can't accept. Some people possess an uncanny ability to immediately come to terms with their reality, while many suffer because of their inability to cope up with what's going on within them and around them. When it comes to acceptance, there are two sides that need to be taken care of. The first is self-acceptance, which means accepting the reality within you, and the other is acceptance of the reality that is around you. There are many things that are in your control and many that are beyond it. Knowing what we have control over and accepting the things that we do not have control over is a strong foundation for resilience. Whether we have to face a crisis or a problem, it's only a human reaction to get overwhelmed by the things that feel far beyond your control. Instead of wishing there was some way you could go back in time or change things, you can focus on the things that are in your control.
And I like to share with them something called the serenity prayer that you might have heard of. It's from an American theologian named Reinhold Niebuhr. And it goes like this. It goes, may I have the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And you can be religious about it. You can say, God grant me the serenity. You can have a secular approach. And it doesn't matter whether religious or not. But the thing is that this is a beautiful, beautiful message that he developed in the 1930s and 40s. It got picked up by Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's been used by all different sorts of 12-step programs, helped millions of people all over the world. Now, what I love about it is this beauty of, may I have the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. There's a lot of things we cannot change every day, right? And much of our frustration is about things we cannot change. And the more that we can have the serenity and peace to recognize, wow, I can't change this. I cannot change this. On the other hand, there's the, may I have the courage to change the things I cannot accept. And sometimes we need the courage to step forward and say, wow, this is wrong. This is an injustice. I need to fight for what is right, and I'm going to step forward and make this happen. And then the wisdom to know the difference. When you need to fight more, when you need to step back, when you need to be at peace with us.
Self-acceptance, accepting the reality within you. An important element of accepting is withholding judgment. When we judge something painful as bad, we reinforce our tendency to resist it. The resistance can express itself in the form of self-criticism that hampers our ability to deal with daily challenges. And when we continue to judge others, we also neglect the valuable feedback that others can give us to nurture our lives.
Acceptance of your inner reality is a non-judgmental awareness of who you are, with all your strengths and weaknesses, and yet you hold the power to change, alter, and to improve whatever you want in your life. True acceptance is seeking change, but at the same time, accepting yourself as who you are. But there'll be always pressures from people who want to change you, to fit you into their expectations. And those who don't accept themselves, they must be always seeking approval from other people, and they seldom learn to exercise their true capacity.
Self-acceptance deepens your inner strength to handle challenges wisely, and you become more in control of yourself because of the awareness you have about yourself. Worldview, accepting the reality around you.
Because what is reality? Right? When you ask people that, you got to be very careful. Before you accept reality, I say, let's see how you are defining it and attaching meaning to it. Because some people, they'll tell you, oh, my reality is so awful and horrible, and my wife is so crappy, and my kids are little bastards, and every day it seems just like another day through the slog. But from an outside perspective, you look at their life and you say, what a lucky dude. He's got a wife and some nice kids who are healthy. He's got a job, he's got a house, he's got a car. He just, maybe his reality isn't so bad. It's his attitude that is bad, but he's defining it externally. Does that make sense? So a lot of us end up defining reality in negative ways when reality is extraordinary and it's abundant and it's got vibe and pop and zest. See, that's how I define my reality. My reality is defined by my own will, by my own decision about what I want reality to be about, and I accept that. Now, some people, again, they do that in healthful ways, and some people unhealthful ways. If you're oblivious to what is going all around, I mean, it would be ridiculous to be in a war-torn area of the world and say, you know, I'm totally safe, I'm totally safe, I'm totally safe. We still have to watch out for ourselves. There's no question about that in some contexts. But we should also recognize that, you know, let's accept what is real based on what we are going to decide is real. That reality is not a fixed thing for any of us. Your reality is not fixed. You can change your perception of your reality anytime you choose to. And that is what gives us an extraordinary amount of personal power in life, but also can really challenge us if we're not careful about it. Because it's very easy to start, you know, saying reality is bad, to start taking the reality of a victim, to taking the reality of blaming everybody else. It's very easy to shape and shift our reality into things that we believe to be true when they're not necessarily. And it is our own beliefs and our own faith sometime that can get us in trouble, believe it or not. Because our own beliefs can say, reality is terrible. People are bad, the world is bad, I am bad, and so my reality is bad. And defining it in that way, I say, don't accept that. If your view and your perspective of reality is not supportive, is not positive, is not charging you with energy and joy and zest each day, it is time to change what you are paying attention to. It is time to change your focal area. It is time to change your very definition of what reality is, what your life is, what your future will be. It is time to redefine your reality if it's not supporting you.
There are things that can be changed and there are things that are beyond our control. For example, if you have children with traits you cannot accept, then it is your duty as a parent to guide them and try to inspire them to change. But if your children decide to go their own way, then the only available option is that you accept your child for who they have chosen to be.
The world does not always move according to our plan. We can't be complaining all the time just because the reality that we are facing is unacceptable to us. It will be very naive to say at night, the dog shouldn't be barking or the sun shouldn't be this hot during the summer. Acceptance does not mean that you have to like it. Accepting what is happening around you isn't very difficult either. It just means that you're willing to let the way it is. After all, what other choices do we have, since that's the way it is?
Therefore, the real wisdom is in knowing what you have control over and what you don't have control over. Some suffering can be legitimate, and sometimes there is nothing you can do to undo something that has already happened.
There are a lot of factors that contribute to our resilience, but one of the things I've discovered is that the most resilient people embrace what is. What does that mean? It means they look at a situation, and no matter what the situation is, how much they wish it were different, how much they wish somebody else was involved or not involved, they look at it and they say, it is what it is. Now, what am I going to do from here? It can be so tempting to turn around and face backwards and think about what happened in the past and the door that's closed and how you wish it would be open. That doesn't change anything. If you're going to be resilient, if you're going to bounce back and actually bounce forward, you have to say, you know what? I might not like it, but it is what it is. What am I going to do? And how am I going to make the most of what is? When you embrace what is, you can finally take a deep breath and start making plans based on reality. When we don't do that, we end up wasting time. We end up ruminating on problems and really taking our negativity and making it our focus, as opposed to saying, you know what? I still have the time that I have right now. I'll never forget when I found myself starting my life over and I thought, I remember I was literally 37 one day. I was like, I'm 37. I should have gotten to XYZ point by now. And something just switched in me, and it was this. I'm 37. I have a lot of life in front of me. What do I want to do with what I have left? It was the point at which I said, it is what it is, and I embrace what is, and I'm grateful for where I am and the time that I have in front of me. Now, what am I going to do with it? Now, I don't know how that applies to you. It might be in your career. It might be in relationships. It might be a financial loss you've suffered and you're just so frustrated by it. But start where you are. Embrace your reality and believe that it's possible to take steps forward from here. Not just to bounce back, but to bounce forward.
Accepting the reality around you is as important as accepting the reality within you. One of the reasons we turn away from reality is that we are programmed to reject life as it is. We want to live a life that is based on our own idea of how life should be. And this leads to a conflict with the reality we face in our day-to-day life.
So the way to accept reality is, first of all, to understand that there's a principle that governs or directs this issue. And anytime we are unhappy about the way that things are, what we are trying to do is to control something that is outside of our control. Because one of the foundational principles about this world in which we live is the principle of control. And that principle of control says that we have control over only three things, which are our conscious thoughts, our emotions, and our behaviors. Everything else is influence. So anytime reality is different than what we think that it should be, and we feel uncomfortable because of that, and we want things to be different, we're just arguing with the truth. We're arguing with the law or a principle, and it doesn't matter how much we want to argue with it, we're not going to be able to change that. So the way to accept reality is to realize that it's a choice. And regardless of whatever reality is, we can choose to accept it or not accept it. And if we choose not to accept it, then we get to ask ourselves why, because everything we do for a reason. So if I choose not to accept reality and I choose to be upset or sad or angry or whatever that emotion connected with that decision is, there must be some payoff that I'm getting for choosing to not accept reality and to feel the way that I'm feeling. Once I accept accountability for that, then I can look at, okay, well, what is the payoff? What am I getting from this? And is it really benefiting me? And then we make a choice of, do I want to keep doing what I'm doing? Or if it's not working, I now have the power and control to change the whole situation, because in an instant, I can recognize that reality is what it is. I can't change it. And just by accepting it, I can now get into a state of peace, acceptance, and happiness.
When we lack the capacity to understand our reality, we tend to develop undue expectations from our loved ones by resisting the discomfort of situations and people. It becomes our natural tendency to resist the unpleasantness involved in that change, and we try to hold on to our miseries rather than focus on overcoming them. Deciding what we need to accept and what we can change is an eternal challenge for us. David Rico, psychotherapist and author of the book 5 Things We Can't Change and the Happiness We Find by Embracing Them, primarily outlines 5 immutable facts that we can't change. 1. Everything changes and ends. 2. Things do not always go according to plan. 3. Life is not always fair. 4. Pain is a part of life. 5. People are not always loving and loyal. One of the greatest achievements of human spirit is the inner power to transmute personal suffering into inner peace and joy. There are necessary evils. There are events and situations that are part of a higher benefit. So there is no shame in accepting defeats, shedding tears, or being exhausted if you have no control over your circumstances. But one thing that you must remember is that you have an absolute power over your internal circumstances. That is your mindset.
Reality is what it is. We have to come to the realization that it isn't what happens to us that causes our suffering. It's our reaction to what happens to us that causes our suffering. So if we're in front of a situation where we feel blocked and we want to advance, we want to go ahead, but we feel blocked, then we have to watch the internal process that happens within us. It's the only place we have to keep going every time after time after time. Go inside. I'm blocked right now. How am I reacting to it? Do I react with anger? Do I react with frustration? Do I react with depression or a loss of energy? Or do I start dumping on myself? Well, what's wrong with me? Why can't I advance right now? What's wrong with this situation? There's nothing wrong with the situation. There's only something wrong with the way we react to that situation. Now, that's easier said than done, I know, because, there's oftentimes that I can get really frustrated with myself when things don't happen. But every time I do, if I take the time to go inside, it's my reaction to this particular situation which is causing me stress, I regain control. I regain the power. It's not out there. It's always, always, always within us. We have the power to either accept the situation as it is, or to fight against it, to fight against reality. And there's this famous quote by Byron Katie that says, now, if you fight against reality, you are going to lose, but only 100% of the time. Because reality is what it is. It's like somebody being stuck in traffic. You've got to get to work and you're stuck in traffic. You're not moving. You can get angry, you can get depressed, you can get frustrated, but the bottom line is you're stuck in traffic. There's only two ways to go through that situation, either angry or frustrated or at peace. And internal peace is an internal process. You can't fight what is in that moment.
What do you have control over? You are different from the situations you are in. The circumstances can influence your thinking and decisions, but your internal mental condition also has a power to function independently. Your mind has the power to hold over your circumstances. This power is called intent.
The key is to separate yourself from the situation you are in. Learn to separate life from life conditions. Your problems are temporary. The way the challenges affect you now need not always be permanent. Your circumstances do not define you. Remember, the outside does not make the inside. It's the other way. You may not have the power over your external, but you can take 100% control on your internal, the way you think and feel. People around you can make you go nuts, go crazy, but you have the capacity to maintain your sanity if you know how to handle the triggers and the stimuli. You don't need to react to everything and to every provocation out there. It's not necessary to answer all the questions you don't have clear answers to. You have the power to take an independent stand, an objective stand, irrespective of whatever may be the circumstances or however these circumstances are pressuring you into doing something you don't want to. Just because a ball is thrown at you does not mean you have to catch it. Remember, our choices are more important than our circumstances.
So if I'm experiencing an emotion of unhappiness, of jealousy, of fear, any of those kind of negative-based emotions, the first step is to turn my brain on and to shift my focus from the event, the person, the situation, and to bring it to my thoughts. And to identify what are the thoughts that I'm thinking about this situation. And then I can ask myself, is that thought true? Second question is, can I absolutely for sure know that it's true? And then it's, okay, well, what can I do about it? If I can't do anything externally about the situation, well, I can do something internally about it. I can change my thoughts about that situation or event. And then our emotions are not created by the event or the circumstance or the person. Our emotions are created by our thoughts. So here's the link. We have the trigger or the event. We have our which the trigger of the event has no meaning. It means nothing until we attach thought to that. And with that thought, we attach meaning to the event. And then those thoughts create the emotion. So if we are feeling anything other than happiness, it's because of the thoughts that we're choosing to think. If we don't want to be unhappy, then we change our thoughts. The other thing to think about here is, if I want to hang on to an unhappy feeling, since I'm choosing that, there's a reason that I'm choosing it. So now I want to go back in and I want to look at what is the payoff of that emotion. So I may say or tell myself, I don't want to feel this way, but if I continue to feel that way, then the truth is I really do. There's something about me that wants to feel angry, that wants to feel sad, that wants to feel jealous or hurt or whatever it is. Once we identify what that is, now we have the power to change that and to realize, is this goal or outcome, is it really in my self-interest? And is it principle-based? Am I trying to accomplish or do something here that I don't have control over? I'm trying to control somebody else? If so, I want to let that go and bring it back to myself and say, is this a situation where I want to be right rather than I want to be happy? Or I want to have what I want to have more than I want to be happy? And then be honest with ourselves.
You can clearly see your life and change it only if you take the role of an observer. Learn to think objectively rather than experience everything subjectively. Acceptance isn't giving up. Accepting something is not surrendering or being passive. It means to observe things as they are. Acceptance is an active choice we should make to release ourselves of a false sense of control, so that we can stop fighting reality. We can still be accepting while also working diligently and effectively to bounce back, which is what resilient people do best.
So a lot of people ask me, and they say, well, what do you mean? You're saying that I have to accept everything that's going on in my life? All the negative things in my life? And I'm saying, well, I know they appear to be negative, but yes, accept it. Now, accepting it doesn't mean I give up. Well, I give up, I accept it. I'm in a terrible relationship, I accept it. Or I'm in a terrible job, I don't like it, I accept it. Doesn't mean abandonment. Accepting doesn't mean abandonment. Accepting means, okay, this is the reality. Where do I go from here?
Resilience occurs when we accept that there are things that we cannot change and everything is not permanent. Everything is going to change sooner or later. Every moment changes. Therefore, what might be the present will always change too. This allows continual acceptance to happen. This realization helps us to move forward. We can also move forward with the lessons that we can learn from our previous experiences. Acceptance isn't about sitting back and letting life go by. There's always something to learn from every experience, and finding those lessons is an important part of the resilience process. Psychologists call it acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT. Accepting reality as it is and working with whatever it brings with itself is a process of moving forward rather than being stuck with what happens to us.
The opposite of acceptance is denial. Very often, we resist the reality to avoid the pain associated with it. But pain is a necessary aspect of living that alerts us about the fact that something needs our attention. Our natural tendency to avoid pain leads to resistance and suffering rather than acceptance and healing.
Maybe something horrible might have happened to you, but what happened has already happened. You can't undo it, and you cannot live in denial that it never happened. Acceptance is the key, because once you accept what is, you transcend it. In fact, Scott Peck's classic book, Road Less Travel, it starts with a strong statement: life is difficult. Now, this statement is very important because most of us want to deny the fact that life is difficult. But once you make peace with what is, Even the worst of tragedies can be healed.
Now, you may or may not know my story, but as a teenager, I was abducted by 2 criminals when I was traveling overseas. Eventually, they left me for dead. And the way that I chose to deal with it at the time, I was a teenager, was to pretend it didn't happen. Now, that only bought me a little small window of peace just in the immediate impact of the event. But in order to gain true healing and eventually get over it, I had to accept that, look, this thing has happened. I had to make peace with that. There's no unringing a bell. It's done, and there's not anything I could do to make it unhappen. So first, make peace with what is.
A dose of pragmatism helps us to accept things as they are, not as you hope or wish they could be. It's easy to slip into a denial as a way of coping with challenging times, but the real way to prepare yourself to face the brutal reality is through acceptance. With each day and month, the cost of denial always goes up. Remember, ignoring a problem does not always solve them. Resilience means having the capacity to change before you have to, change before change becomes a necessity. This is more like planning for the future rather than being the victims of reality. Remember, resistance delays action and denial totally avoids action.
Pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Resilient people accept what is. They accept that nothing is permanent, and therefore, they focus on the lessons they can learn, ways through which they can overcome, adapt, and move forward with grace and dignity. Resilient people change what is not. They take control of the situation. Stoicism is based on the concept that peace of mind comes from focusing on what you can control instead of wasting your energy on things you can't change. According to the Stoics, the only things you can control are your own thoughts, subsequent beliefs, attitudes, and actions. Everything else, whatever is not your own thought, belief, or action, is outside of your total control. Therefore, getting annoyed when something doesn't go your way is a waste of resources. Whenever you are stressed about something, you are thinking about something that is out of your control. To paraphrase Dr. Wayne Dyer, there is no point worrying about what you have no control of, like weather or growing old, and there is no need to worry about what you can control. Resilient people look for circumstances that please them, and sometimes, when they are unable to find any, they create one. They know their locus of control very well.
Our ability to navigate the world independently, through good and through bad times, is really tightly tied to our sense of control. See, you either think you control your universe, or you believe you're a victim of circumstance. In the worst of times, a sense of control is the key to survival. In the best of times, it's central to flourishing. It makes the difference in whether or not you're going to recognize and grasp those opportunities.
Resilient people feel that there is something they can always do about their circumstances, however bad that might be. People who lack this internal locus of control and those who operate in this external locus of control, they tend to act helpless in a given challenging situation. Therefore, a major part of resilience building is about building your internal locus of control. Those with a strong internal locus of control, they tend to believe that they are capable of influencing their outcome and their experiences. They take responsibility for their actions. They ignore the naysayers and pay less attention to what others think. They also tend to be high achievers, and whenever they fail, they take 100% responsibility for their failures. People with external locus of control are just the opposite. They believe that life is controlled by others or external factors such as luck or fate. If you want to find a typical one at this, just observe people who have a natural tendency to blame other people for whatever happens to them. When you internalize external circumstances, you tend to lose control over your circumstances. When your mind becomes subjective to conditions, it loses its objectivity to handle difficult situations. Your mind is your weapon. Remember that. It's the only weapon that can turn around anything that you perceive in this reality. Your mind can make you see opportunity while others continue to see obstacles. You can see advantage over adversity, but all this worldview begins from how you perceive it, from your internal locus of control.
When it comes to reality, we have absolute control on the causes, but not on the effects. In most cases, causes determine the outcome. That's why Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "Shallow men believe in luck or in circumstance. Strong men believe in cause and effect." Here is what resilient people do. What they can't control, they let go of them. What they can control, they take action. The power of letting go. Another strong dimension of acceptance and control is having the power to let go of something.
What you can't let go has a power over you. Therefore, practicing detachment is the key for developing resilience. Humans have a tendency to define themselves with what they possess or what they have over who they are or what they are. It's a conflict of having versus being. Since it's difficult to define who you are, and this requires a lot of inner work, it's easy to resort to definitions, to things that we possess, to define our existence with what we have. We identify with how we are defined by the structures around us, by our jobs, our titles, our relationships, our families, our successes. This leads to an identity battle between having versus being.
Whatever you resist persists. So learning how to let go and adapt to change and adverse conditions can really help you to move towards a new mindset and develop more resilience along the way. The truth is that we all have a potential energy that brings in us the capacity to change, evolve, and grow. You are not a single, unrelated speck of energy. You create a field of energy, relationships, and outcomes. If your world changes, you change too. And if you change, the world changes around you. The truth of the matter is that a tiny shift in perception or behavior can create monumental changes in the internal dynamics that you call your life.
What you possess does not define you. If you do so, you are at a very vulnerable point, my friend. Because when you lose what you have, you become nothing. Who you are must define you, and not what you have. Now, this concept is very important because some crisis in your life can attack you at the very core of your sense of self. For example, you might be a VP of a company, but you lose your job. Who are you then? What if you identify yourself as a spouse? What happens when your marriage is over? Or you might, define you as an entrepreneur. But what happens when you lose your company? What's your identity then? Remember, when you cling on to a narrow definition of yourself, you're at a vulnerable end whenever there is a crisis that can strike off your identity. You can be shattered when you lose something that you identify yourself with, whether it could be title or a fame or money or success or fortune.
You are not what you do. What happens to you when you are no longer doing it? Your worth does not depend on what you do. Your self-worth must be measured on what you are, the potential to do anything and become anyone. You are resilient when you truly know who you are. The more detached you are from your possessions and titles, the more you are immune to crisis, loss, and separation. Therefore, real acceptance is embracing who you are, not what you have. You are nothing but pure potentiality. You are a human spirit, a speck of this infinite universe, capable of evolving, changing, and growing. You have the power over your circumstances. You can navigate your journey to any direction that you want. And nothing can stop you except you yourself.